Hello and welcome to Business Today Television. I'm Siddharth Zarabi, live from the India Today studios at the World Economic Forum in Davos. With me, two guests. Arjun Dhawan, the Executive Vice Chairman of one of India's oldest and most well-known infrastructure and construction companies, HCC, and Anil Chalamalasetti, the Chief Executive Officer and Managing Director of Greenco. Welcome. It's day 2 of Davos and a theme which says cooperation in a fragmented world. The weather's been changing quite a bit and we have a bit of a chill again. Arjun, I'm starting with you and set the context really for the first question to you with what was just released by PwC in a global survey. They said last year when we were at the same venue, there was record optimism when it comes to the global sort of CEO mood with regard to business, and now there is a record pessimism primarily on account of the aftermath of the Russian-Ukraine war and everything else. How would you describe the mood of Davos this time around?
Well, I think it's certainly much more measured because I think most of the countries in the world are either in recession or are going to actually face this over the next year. There is a different level of optimism. Europe is very different from the US because it's the front lines of the Ukraine conflict, and there the supply chain disruptions are probably the highest. I think the tone this time is much more about the sustainability of industry and our ability to, within the next 30 years, be able to get to net zero. And I think that in that respect, the key discussions are around actually creating a much more circular economy and to be able to innovate to actually get there.
Arjun, we'll pick up some of those strands that you give us here. Anil, at the same point really, with the added sort of request for viewers who may not be so familiar, your name itself has Greenco, so you are sustainable by brand. You are here. What do you see, hope to achieve from Davos in terms of the learning and lessons that you take from here?
Thank you, Siddharth. Firstly, I would say being at Davos and seeing the promenade, every 10 meters you can't avoid India being there, and everyone is speaking about sustainability. And very incidentally, we have in geopolitics and energy security across the world and climate action. All of them actually are looking at the same one, clean energy solutions and sustainability in the supply chain development and how they can be spread across. Given that context, I feel really proud that how India is participating and taking leadership across the world, and the vision of the country and the leadership to drive the sustainable leader. Very glad and proud for them.
We come to the sustainability part before we get into some India specifics. Like you correctly said, Europe's been taught a lesson, and let's not forget that wars have always been fought on Europe and not within America. America may have participated in many wars, so Europe's learned a lesson of a different kind on energy security. Given that context, explain to our viewers how significant is green energy for an Indian economic growth and long-term climate sustainability point of view?
It's fundamental, and I think India has actually stood tall, and probably the tallest among, I think, most large economies, and as a developing economy without any kind of reliance on any cross-subsidy. If you look at what's happened in COP27, and I'm not a pessimistic person, but it's just not enough. You've created a $100 billion fund, which is peanuts relative to the annual cost of actually getting us to net zero, which if you calculate between 2 to 6% of the world income, which is, let's say, a midpoint of about 4 trillion a year, 100 billion as a transfer to developing countries is not enough. The total amount of emissions by the industrialized world, that's actually, on which most of the economies have been built and comparative industry has been built, is then going to cause, I think, developing economies to actually suffer very greatly.
In simpler words, what you are saying is, while the developed world has benefited from a fossil fuel era, India is going on its own, and we are the 40% renewable that we produce right now it's a good thing.
So I'm saying two things here. I'm saying that one, India has actually independently probably been one of the countries that's met its targets, irrespective of the fact that COP27 is not done enough. But ultimately, the report card for countries is not going to be one country or another. It's going to be everybody getting an F, 30 years from today.
Okay. Anil, come in on that. 40% of all our power today is green power, and it's a different mix really. What do you see happening in that space? By when do you think there will be a majority at least crossing 51% in terms of green power production in India? Green energy rather.
Can you do a small correction? It's a 40% of installed capacity.
Yes.
We are today at 20% of net energy from the renewables or non-fossil fuels, including the nuclear and
So
large
40 of installed and 20
20
of?
is actually 20 of an energy contribution.
Okay.
So the country's ambition is to go up to 45% of an whole energy basket as in non-fossil energy by 2030.
Okay.
I think the pace what we are developing and the momentum what we have gained, we have clear vision that I'm pretty sure I think we should be able to touch above 50% by 2030, because until now we've been looking at then decarbonizing the only power sector. But interestingly, the renewables are now playing a very active role into the other chemical and as well as industry zone. So that will actually enhance towards a lot more renewable
Which are
implementation.
those industries in India which are looking to turn their businesses green to whatever extent is possible?
To begin with, while we have a lot of captive old generation steel and aluminum industries who are turning towards round-the-clock renewables like ArcelorMittal, Hindalco and SRs, those guys are trying to convert themselves into green as in captive powers, which they used to be a captive by gas or coal. And added to that, we have great opportunity where we have a $40 billion LNG import for a hydrogen molecule utilization. Today, we can directly replace that with electrolyzing, running through renewables, producing green hydrogen. There's a market, huge market, which is going to be converted into from fertilizer.
What's your company doing in this particular space? A quick one.
To begin with, actually, we were traditionally in diversified renewable energy assets. Last 4 to 5 years onwards, we've been moved on to developing in large-scale storage solutions for renewables. We are developing a network of storage assets, which are going to create a 50 gigawatt hours of storage platform by 2025.
Within the company, 50 gigawatts?
50 gigawatt hours, which can be used more than once in a day.
Okay.
So that enables not only towards our various energy partners and other renewable energy developers as well, who can dynamically store and draw energy, which is enabled towards decarboning a lot of industries. And from there, we are developing in electrolyzers of world's largest scale, of 2 gigawatt scale, which will enable us towards producing green hydrogen and producing green ammonia and exporting towards the global markets.
What seems at this stage viewers to be the new frontier is soon going to be mainstream in a few years. The snow is blowing in. I want to turn our attention to India so that we can forget the cold that is seeping in from here. I have just learned from Arjun that the company is going to build the Bandra Kurla station for the high-speed rail in Mumbai. Tell our viewers about that, at least those who may not have heard about this. What does it entail and what does it really mean in terms of that ambitious project which everyone is looking forward to?
So if you look at
the mic, please. Yeah.
If you look at the government's ambition to actually, one, decongest our mega cities and do that by connecting them to satellite towns and suburbia, which really would, increase the quality of life in our urban centers, the high-speed rail is one step closer to that ambition, right? If you go back to Japan in the 60s, that since 1964, Tokyo actually had that solution, which creates affordability in our urban centers, right? So the principle of new urbanism that we should, be aspiring towards is that 15-minute city, which means that the average citizen should actually be able to access all necessity, and social infrastructure within a 15-minute walk or a 15-minute bicycle ride. If you look at our metro systems in India today, we've I think got the 5th largest metro network in the world today, about 800 plus kilometers of that. A lot of that is underground, huge amounts of investment, probably much more expensive than building above ground. But the point being that we actually reduce the amount of air and noise pollution, increase green spaces within our cities, and very importantly, you have affordability, you have densification in our cities, and you then also have safety, and that ends up creating a much more vibrant economy for our city generation. The point here is that cities continue to be the GDP generator of our country, right? 70% of our GDP is going to come from cities, and India has the added burden of, or the challenge of, urban migration from rural centers.
Taking people from rural
Yeah,
India.
which by the way in Europe happened over centuries. You know, you're having, you know, that many million Indians come into urban centers in a span of decades. So how do we actually build sustainably? How do we continue to, you know, have a higher quality of life? How do we reduce the noise and dust? And that's something that, you know, the government's actually doing a fairly admirable job of.
So what will this station look like? I want to pursue that point because a lot of our railway stations are increasingly looking like airports, and I think that's
No, world class.
Huh?
I mean, you know, it has to be, you know, world class. Right?
Draw that image for our viewers, if you
Well,
can.
I mean, you know, I will, you know, imagine. So if you look at our airports today, and if you look at our airports, actually are frankly the best airports, among the best airports in the world. Our stations should actually be very different from that. You know, you have mixed use retail. You have the ability for, I mean, take the average Swiss station, and I think that you can probably actually imagine something as good or better than that.
Okay, Anil, the snow continues to billow in, and you know, I'm grateful that both of you are being such sports here. I want to ask you about the other fundamental issue, which is government regulation and policy certainty when it comes to renewables. We've seen certain changes. We've also seen a 20% import duty. Is there anything in the policy mix that you would like to be addressed, if not in the budget or otherwise, that would really provide a leg up to these efforts?
See, broadly, if you're going to see from 1996 onwards, when the LCT has been reforms have been started, that's much of the most complicated sector as such. We have seen an LCT Act coming up. There's various amounts of changes been continuously happening. And there's one sector, the last 20 years, has been reformed so many times. And this sector requires a deep-pocketed, patient investors, and you have to really understand the government and work very closely. And very positive that there is very reactive government and understand their rights and wrongs, but they are reacting towards correcting things and moving forward. But as investors, you really have a deeper pocket, you got to be patient, understand how do you drive things.
Okay. Arjun, I will let you have the last word as we wind down this conversation. In terms of the mood of Indian business vis-a-vis global business, we started with a mention of the PricewaterhouseCoopers survey. What's really making CEOs like you optimistic about the India growth story?
Look, India has been not only resilient, but we showed tremendous restraint in terms of how we've spent our resources. We haven't increased the size of the welfare state. We've kept our budget deficits low. Our corporate tax rates are the most competitive in the world. You know, we can't be a proud country without actually being a clean one. And in fact, our Prime Minister certainly gets a salute for the fact that, you know, he's led from the front there. It's, you know, completely different scenario of the last decade. I think that if you look at where India will continue to attract an evergreen amount of FDI. I think that the question is how expensive that capital will be. And over the period of time, India has gone from being a trusted partner to an even more trusted partner. And with certain further reforms, I mean, one area of improvement that India does need to get is contract enforcement. The cost of that capital will continue to decline, and we'll be able to do much more with less.
At the same point, if you wanted to add in terms of what really sort of makes you happy and energetic about going to office every day and saying, this is our time, this is our country's time.
No, I think we are in a great cusp of, as in humankind. We are going through as in humankind, we have across the whole world. India has been integrated with the global economy and global transitions, and we've been actually leading the whole solutions, and not only for external, internal as well. And while we moved from then renewables, round the clock renewables, then towards green hydrogen, ammonia, and chemicals, and exporting them. These are all actually positioned not only solutions for us, sustainable solutions to us, but to the whole world as well. And along with that, these are more inflation-free growth.
Who would have imagined maybe 5 or 10 years back that I would have Indian CEO next to me, and not just Anil, but Arjun and others through the day, who are now talking about India being an energy exporter. Which was something that one would have never imagined for a country that was import dependent, still is when it comes to crude oil. This is absolutely great news. Arjun, you've been a great sport, and Anil, as it gets further snowed out here, I don't know whether should we call it a flurry or the beginnings of a blizzard.
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful.
It's absolutely beautiful.
Well, thank you very much. I really enjoyed this conversation, and thank you for being here. And if you, the viewer, have been seeing this, thank you very much. We'll be back with more. Keep tuned in.
Thanks, Siddharth.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.